5 True Scary Stories for Halloween. Uncover the secrets of the supernatural. I've hesitated, debating whether to share these stories with you. It's the way they claw at the mind and linger, filling empty corners of thought when night falls and silence settles in. These aren't just stories passed down for cheap thrills. They come from real people, real places, each one with its own brand of horror. I can't shake the sense that there's something more to them, something that refuses to be silenced. So here we are, on the precipice of Halloween night, with the weight of secrets only whispered in the darkest hours. I'll tell you these stories not to entertain, but because a part of me feels like I must. You see, Halloween is a strange thing. A time when the boundary between our world and the other seems to grow thin. And on this night, when the air cools and the leaves crumple beneath our feet, the line between truth and terror blurs. Some say that every Halloween, we choose our fears, wrapping ourselves in costumes and illusions to scare off whatever's out there. But what if some fears aren't chosen? What if there are moments, nights like this one, when the dark chooses us instead? A fair warning, once you hear these stories, you may never see Halloween the same way again. Story 1. The Whispering Shadows. It was the Halloween Jamie never anticipated. Their parents had left for a weekend retreat, deciding Jamie was old enough to stay at Aunt Clara's place in the sleepy town of Hollow Creek. Aunt Clara's home was one of those creaky old houses nestled on a hill, watching over the town like some ancient sentinel. Jamie's parents had assured them it would be quaint and historic, but all Jamie could think was haunted. The house seemed determined to live up to its reputation. Shadows crept around every corner, slipping beneath door frames and stretching across the peeling wallpaper. And yet, when Jamie mentioned the odd feeling to Aunt Clara over breakfast that morning, she simply chuckled, waving it off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh honey, it's just Halloween jitters," she said, ruffling Jamie's hair. "This house is older than your grandma's secrets, but it's just that. A house and shadows are just tricks of the light." That night, as Jamie lay awake, watching the clock slowly approach midnight, they began to notice it. A faint, rustling sound, like leaves brushing against the window, except Jamie's room was on the second floor, and there were no trees near the window. They could feel it then, the presence in the hallway. A dark shape pressed against the door, its outline slipping under the crack, inching closer. Jamie held their breath, squeezing their eyes shut, convincing themselves it was just their imagination. But the shadows didn't leave. Every night they returned, thickening like a pool of ink, as if gathering strength. And now, on Halloween night, they seemed sharper, more defined, swirling in dark, viscous tendrils along the hall. Jamie shivered, pulling the blanket tighter. The shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, each one stretching and twisting, spilling into shapes that resembled fingers clawing at the walls, lips that whispered words Jamie couldn't quite understand. At first, the whispers were faint, a murmur just beyond reach, leaving Jamie with only a sense of their urgency. Jamie tried to press their ear to the door, catching fragments of words that drifted like a broken melody. "Please, help, don't stay, leave before." The voice wavered, growing louder, and Jamie's pulse quickened, a cold sweat prickling their skin. They opened the door a crack, just wide enough to peer into the hallway. And there they were, shadows cast along the length of the corridor, standing like sentries, vague, human-shaped figures staring at Jamie with hollow, vacant eyes. For a moment, Jamie considered calling out, but something about the shadows seemed broken, fractured, as if they were caught between worlds, trapped in a place they didn't belong. The urge to run, to flee down the stairs, to burst through the front door and sprint into the night was nearly overwhelming. But something rooted Jamie in place. The whispers grew louder, the voices mingling, a symphony of sorrow and desperation that wrapped around them like a net. The shadows were pleading, begging Jamie to leave. But beneath that plea was something darker, an echo of a warning that if they stayed, they might soon join the whispering figures in the darkness. At that moment, Jamie's gaze fell upon an old diary resting on the hallway table, its cover faded and cracked with age. How long had that been there? Trembling, Jamie picked it up and began to read by the faint glow of a nearby nightlight. The diary belonged to someone named Evelyn, who had stayed at Aunt Clara's house years ago. As Jamie flipped through the brittle pages, their horror grew. Evelyn's entries detailed similar encounters with the shadows, flickers in the hallway, whispers at night, and warnings she hadn't heeded. The last entry sent a chill down Jamie's spine. "They're trying to take me. I see them now, clearer than ever. Their faces are frozen in time, lost to the shadows. If I stay here, I'll be next." Jamie stumbled back, the diary slipping from their hands, landing on the floor with a muffled thud. They turned, catching sight of their reflection in the hallway mirror. But what they saw made their heart pound against their ribs. The person staring back at them looked like Jamie, but older, far older. The reflection's skin was withered, the eyes hollow and sunken, with a faint, despairing glint, as if pleading from some unreachable depth. They staggered back, gasping, glancing again at the mirror. The reflection mirrored their every movement but lingered just a moment too long, the eyes seeming to implore, almost as if to say, "You are next." Aunt Clara's voice drifted from downstairs, faint and calm, calling Jamie to come to bed. But there was something in her tone, a chilling calmness that felt wrong. Jamie knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that they couldn't stay. They sprinted down the stairs, out into the cold Halloween night, leaving Aunt Clara's house and the shadows behind them. Story 2: A Stranger's Call. In the heart of Hollow Grove, a small rural town with limited cell service, the night air buzzed with a chill that sent shivers down the spine of anyone brave enough to step outside. The distant sounds of laughter echoed as children roamed the streets in costumes, the glow of jack-o'-lanterns flickering like tiny beacons in the encroaching darkness. But for Sarah, a 17-year-old with a penchant for mystery novels, this Halloween was about to turn into a chilling tale of its own. It started as a regular evening. Sarah was at home, nestled in the living room with her friends, sharing ghost stories and eating way too much candy. The atmosphere was light, laughter spilling from their lips like the candy from the bowl. But as the clock struck 10, the festive mood shifted. Sarah's phone buzzed violently against the table, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. Curious, she picked it up. "Hello?" Sarah answered, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "Help me," whispered a voice, trembling and faint, before the line went dead. Sarah's brow furrowed, her heart racing. Was it a prank? Halloween mischief was common, especially in a town like Hollow Grove, where boredom sometimes led to reckless decisions. After dismissing it as a prank, Sarah tried to shake off the eerie feeling that crept into her mind. But the calls kept coming. Each time, it was the same chilling plea, laced with an urgency that made her skin crawl. Each whisper revealed more disturbing details about her life, her favorite place to hang out, the names of her friends, even her insecurities. With every call, the voice became clearer, more desperate. "Sarah, please, you need to remember the old house by the river, the truth." Panicked, she confided in her friends, hoping they would take her seriously. "I keep getting these calls," she said, her voice rising with frustration. "Someone's asking for help, and they know things about me." Her friends exchanged skeptical glances, rolling their eyes in unison. "It's just Halloween, Sarah. You're letting it get to your head," one of them scoffed, reaching for another handful of candy. "Probably just someone messing with you." But as the night wore on, the calls continued. Sarah could no longer dismiss them as harmless pranks. The voice had a weight to it, a gravity that pulled her deeper into a web of unease. The last call sent her heart racing. "Your family, it's all connected. Remember Halloween night, 1998? The voice faded into static, leaving Sarah breathless. Confusion turned to dread as Sarah tried to piece together what she could remember of her family's history. Her parents were always so careful about their past, choosing to gloss over certain events and redirect conversations that veered too close to uncomfortable topics. It dawned on her that there was something darker lurking beneath the surface, a secret that her family had hidden away, like a ghost trapped in a dusty attic. As the night deepened, the calls grew more insistent, demanding her attention. In a moment of resolve, Sarah decided it was time to confront her parents. She stormed into the kitchen where her mother was washing the last of the dishes, the clatter of pots echoing against the silent walls. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you." I've been getting these calls. Someone's asking for help and they know things about us. What's going on?" Her voice trembled, laced with fear. Her parents exchanged glances, their faces pale as the weight of years of unspoken secrets hung heavily in the air. Her father sighed, setting down the dish towel. "Sarah, there are things about our family that we've kept from you." The room felt suffocating as they began to reveal a family tragedy that had taken place years ago on Halloween night. In 1998, there was an accident at the old house by the river. Your great-aunt Clara was involved. Her mother's voice cracked. She was thought to have drowned, but they never found her body. We believed it was best not to talk about it. Sarah's mind raced as she processed their words. Could the voice on the phone belong to Clara? A distant relative who had somehow survived and was now reaching out from beyond the grave? But what does she want? Sarah's voice quivered with emotion. "She wants you to know the truth, Sarah. The truth about that night," her father said softly, almost as if he were speaking to a frightened child. "We thought it best to let it stay buried, but the past, it has a way of resurfacing." As her parents spoke, the pieces began to fit together in Sarah's mind like a jigsaw puzzle. The old house, the river, and the whispered pleas were not mere coincidences. They were threads woven into the fabric of her family history. In that moment, the gravity of her lineage settled upon her, heavy with the weight of unforgotten stories. Suddenly, the phone rang again, cutting through the tension in the room. Sarah's heart raced as she picked it up, knowing deep down that this was it. This was the call that could finally unveil the secrets. "Hello?" "Sarah," the voice whispered, urgent and imploring. "You must find the truth. It's all connected. Come to the old house tonight." The line went dead, leaving Sarah clutching the phone, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and determination. "I have to go," she said, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her. "Are you crazy? You can't just leave," her friends warned, but the call had awakened something within her, a fierce determination to uncover the truths that had haunted her family for decades. As Sarah stepped into the chilling night, she felt an inexplicable pull towards the old house by the river, the shadows of her family's past beckoning her closer. Secrets buried for years were waiting to be uncovered, and Sarah was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Because some calls cannot be ignored, and some truths demand to be uncovered, no matter how frightening. Story 3: The Doll in the Basement. In the quaint, crumbling expanse of the old Hawthorne family home, echoes of laughter and memories lingered in the air. Trapped between the dust motes that danced in the filtered sunlight, it was the kind of place that held stories in its walls. Whispers of ancestors long gone, secrets tucked away like forgotten treasures. Young Emily, a curious girl with wide eyes and an adventurous spirit, loved to explore every corner of the house, even those that were often deemed too eerie or forbidding for little hands. On a chilly autumn afternoon, with Halloween just around the corner, Emily ventured into the depths of the basement, a shadowy realm filled with boxes and relics of her family's past. The musty scent of old wood and dampness filled her nostrils as she rummaged through the clutter. Among the cobwebs and dust-covered trunks, something caught her eye. A doll, perched atop a forgotten chest. It was unlike any doll she had seen before. Its porcelain face was cracked, its hair matted and tangled, but what struck Emily most was its eerie resemblance to her. The doll wore a faded blue dress, tattered at the edges, and had a haunting smile painted on its lips that seemed almost too real. A chill crept up Emily's spine, but her curiosity overcame her trepidation. She gently lifted the doll, feeling an odd connection, as if it were meant for her. Bringing the doll upstairs, Emily placed it carefully on her bedside table, the smile of the porcelain face haunting her, even as she tried to dismiss it. That night, strange occurrences began to unravel the tranquility of the Hawthorne household. It started small, a missing sock here, a misplaced book there. But as days turned into nights, the strange incidents escalated. One evening, as the family settled in for the night, Emily's mother heard a soft, melodic voice wafting up from the basement, lilting and childlike, singing a tune that seemed both familiar and unsettling. Alarmed, she rushed to the basement door, peering into the darkness, but found nothing out of the ordinary. She tried to dismiss it as an overactive imagination, yet the voice lingered in her mind like an unwelcome guest. The following morning, Emily was startled to find the doll in her bed, despite having left it on the table. "Mom, look," she exclaimed, eyes wide with both excitement and fear. Her mother frowned, the unease in her chest growing heavier. "Emily, we need to talk about that doll." Determined to rid their home of the unsettling presence, Emily's mother took the doll and placed it in a box, sealing it with tape, intending to toss it out. Yet, come morning, the doll had mysteriously reappeared, sitting innocently on Emily's pillow, its smile now seeming even more sinister. "Emily, I'm getting rid of this doll for good," her mother declared, fear creeping into her voice. "It's not safe." But Emily, feeling an inexplicable bond with the doll, begged her mother to reconsider. "It's just a doll. Please don't throw it away." The conflict simmered between them, a tangible tension that hung in the air like an impending storm. As the days went on, the haunting presence grew stronger. Objects began disappearing more frequently, only to reappear in the most unlikely places: a brush in the freezer, a shoe in the attic. At night, the family would hear whispers, soft yet insistent, echoing through the halls. Emily often found herself staring into the doll's eyes, wondering if it was somehow alive, watching her with a knowing gaze. One evening, filled with dread and curiosity, Emily decided to investigate the origins of the doll. She crept into the attic, where old family records and artifacts lay in disarray. After sifting through dusty albums and forgotten letters, she stumbled upon a faded photograph. A girl, no older than Emily, holding the very same doll, her eyes filled with mischief. Written on the back was a name, Lillian Hawthorne, a distant ancestor who had mysteriously vanished on Halloween night many years ago. The realization struck Emily like lightning. "Mom," she called, her voice trembling. "The doll, it belonged to Lillian. She disappeared and I think the doll is cursed." Her mother's face paled as the chilling truth sank in. "Lillian's spirit, it must be trapped inside the doll. It's seeking a new owner to keep it alive," she whispered, fear edging her voice. The doll was not just a mere possession. It was a conduit for Lillian's restless spirit, forever tied to the family's legacy. That night, Emily could feel the weight of the doll's presence pressing down on her. It was as if Lillian was calling out, begging for freedom. Torn between the bond she felt with the doll and the haunting knowledge of its curse, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Determined to find a way to break the curse, Emily remembered the tales of her grandmother, who spoke of rituals that could set spirits free. Gathering her courage, she decided to confront the doll one last time. With a candle flickering in her hands and the air thick with tension, Emily knelt before the doll, the flickering light casting eerie shadows across its porcelain face. "I don't want to keep you trapped, Lillian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I want to help you find peace." As she spoke, she felt a shift in the atmosphere, a tension that seemed to release itself like air from a balloon. The doll's smile seemed to waver, the room growing colder as if the very fabric of reality was bending to Lillian's will. "Help me," a voice echoed softly in Emily's mind, intertwining with the shadows that danced around her. "Let me go." With a resolve fueled by compassion, Emily took the doll and placed it in a small wooden box, the very box that had held her family's cherished memories. "I'll keep you safe until we can find a way to free you," she vowed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You deserve peace, just like everyone else." As the candle flickered and sputtered, Emily felt a warmth envelop the room, a gentle embrace that wrapped around her like a soft blanket. The singing in the basement ceased, and the shadows receded, retreating into the corners of the room. The doll, now resting peacefully in its box, felt lighter, its presence no longer suffocating, but rather a gentle whisper of the past. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences in the Hawthorne home diminished. The whispers faded, and the air grew lighter. Emily's family began to heal from the weight of their history, slowly coming to terms with the legacy that had haunted them for so long. But Emily knew that the story was not over. Lillian's spirit, once a source of fear, had become a part of her family's narrative, a reminder of the past that had shaped them. And as she glanced at the box, now tucked safely in the attic, Emily felt a sense of responsibility, a promise to remember Lillian and the haunting legacy of the doll that had brought them together across the boundaries of time. Story 4. Room Without an Exit. In the fading light of an autumn afternoon, a group of college friends piled into a sprawling old house, the air thick with excitement and the spirit of Halloween. The kind of house that exuded an eerie charm. It was perfect for their weekend of ghost stories, laughter, and of course some spooky fun. The large structure stood at the edge of a dense forest, its weathered facade hinting at untold secrets, beckoning them to explore its shadowy corners. Danny, the unofficial leader of the group, glanced at his friends as they unloaded bags and supplies from their cars. Sarah, with her unshakable optimism, declared this would be the best Halloween yet. Mark, ever the skeptic, scoffed at the idea of any supernatural occurrences. Jess and Brian, always up for a thrill, exchanged mischievous grins, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. After settling in, the group gathered in the spacious living room, its walls lined with bookshelves filled with dusty tomes and faded photographs. They lit candles, casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls as the sun dipped below the horizon. Halloween decorations adorned the house, giving it a festive yet eerie ambiance, and soon they found themselves telling ghost stories, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. As midnight approached, Danny suggested exploring the house further. They wandered through dimly lit hallways and creaking stairs, laughter echoing in the silence. In a forgotten corner, they stumbled upon a peculiar door, its dark wood gleaming oddly in the candlelight. It was a door that none of them recalled seeing before, standing alone in a narrow hallway. "What do you think is behind it?" Jess asked, her curiosity piqued. "Only one way to find out," Danny replied, a hint of adventure sparking in his eyes. With a collective breath, they opened the door, revealing a room that felt completely out of place. A small, windowless space devoid of any light except for the faint glow from their candles. The air inside was thick, heavy with a stale, musty scent, and an unsettling chill swept over them. As they entered, they found themselves in a circular room with smooth, bare walls that seemed to pulsate in the dim light. "Whoa, this is weird," Brian said, glancing around. "Why would a room like this even exist?" They began to walk around, but no matter how far they went, the door remained just out of reach, almost teasing them. "Hey, where's the exit?" Mark laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood, but his chuckle faded as he turned back to the door, now several feet away. Danny frowned, feeling a creeping sense of unease. "Something's not right. We need to go back." They all turned to leave, but the door had shifted further away, disorienting them. Panic bubbled up as they rushed toward it, the walls seeming to close in around them. Whispers echoed in the room, calling their names in a haunting chorus, each voice more familiar than the last. "Danny, Danny, help us. Is someone else in here?" Sarah shouted, her voice trembling. "Hello?" The whispers grew louder, blending into a cacophony of distress. Danny felt the weight of fear settle on his chest as they stumbled backward, attempting to retrace their steps. Each time they turned, the door slipped further from their grasp, the room's layout rearranging in a maddening dance that mocked their attempts to escape. "Guys, what's happening?" Brian yelled, his voice breaking. "This isn't funny anymore." They ran in circles, their laughter replaced by cries of fear. The walls shifted again, warping the space, distorting their sense of direction. One by one, friends began to disappear, drawn into the shadows, their voices fading into the dark. Jess was the first, her scream echoing in the void before silence swallowed her whole. Mark followed, his terrified face disappearing into the depths of the room, leaving only the sound of his panicked breathing behind. Danny's heart raced as Sarah clutched his arm. "We have to find a way out," she pleaded, eyes wide with terror. But with every attempt, the door seemed to mock them, a cruel reminder of their desperation. The voices twisted into anguished cries, taunting them with promises of escape that would never come. "Danny, Sarah, join us," they beckoned, their tones shifting from familiar to grotesque. Panic surged as Danny realized the room was feeding on their fear, reveling in their hopelessness. The walls pulsed like a living entity, absorbing their terror, trapping them in a nightmarish cycle of attempts to escape. The realization hit him hard. The room was a predator, and they were its prey. "No, we can't give in," Danny shouted, but his voice cracked under the weight of despair. Sarah looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, as they continued to search for a way out, grasping at straws of hope. But soon, even Sarah began to fade, her voice merging with the whispers as Danny stood alone, engulfed in darkness. "Danny," her voice echoed, a ghostly whisper that sent chills down his spine. "Help us." Defeated, Danny sank to the floor, his back against the wall as the room shifted around him, trapping him in a reality that twisted and turned like a living maze. The whispers transformed into a symphony of laughter, a chorus of the lost souls who had once walked this path, echoing the fateful night they, too, had entered a room with no exit. With one last flicker of hope, Danny realized that perhaps the only way to escape was to confront the fear that had enveloped him. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes, attempting to silence the chaos around him. He focused on the memories of laughter, friendship, and the love that had once filled this house. "Your fear doesn't control me," he shouted, and for a moment, the laughter stopped. The room fell silent, as if it were taken aback by his defiance. Suddenly, a blinding light enveloped him, and the whispers began to fade. "You are not alone," a voice echoed, resonating with a warmth that pushed back the shadows. "Remember the light." In that moment, Danny understood that the room thrived on despair, and by embracing the love he had for his friends, he could break free. He envisioned their faces, the memories they had created together, and with that vision came strength. The light intensified, and the room shuddered, at the walls trembling as if trying to hold him back. "Let go of the darkness," he cried, feeling an overwhelming surge of energy. With a final pulse of light, the room dissolved around him, and Danny found himself collapsing onto the cold wooden floor of the hallway, gasping for breath. The door to the room stood open behind him, the flickering candlelight beckoning him to safety. But as he looked back, he felt a chilling realization wash over him. The room still existed, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next Halloween victims. It was a reminder of the dangers of curiosity, a seductive pull of the unknown that could lead one into the depths of fear. He rose to his feet, glancing back at the now closed door, its presence lingering like a bad dream. Though he had escaped, he knew that the room would always be there, a dark specter in the corners of his mind, forever waiting to entrap the next group of unsuspecting adventurers who dared to cross its threshold. Story 5. The Watcher Outside. Halloween night draped the remote cabin in the woods in an eerie silence, broken only by the rustling leaves and the occasional howl of the wind. Inside, Alex and Casey settled into the cozy living room, the flickering glow of candles casting long shadows against the walls. They had planned this weekend getaway to escape their busy lives, to reminisce about old times and to celebrate their friendship far away from the distractions of the city. As they toasted marshmallows over the fire, laughter filled the room, pushing back the encroaching darkness outside. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a strange tension crept in. It started with a feeling, an unsettling sensation that someone was watching them. Casey was the first to notice it, glancing out the window as she took a sip of her hot cocoa. "Do you see that?" she whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "What?" Alex replied, leaning closer to the window. In the dim light, a shadowy figure lingered at the edge of the trees, its form indistinct but undeniably present. It stood still, unmoving, as if it had been there for hours. "Probably just someone playing a prank," Alex shrugged, attempting to laugh off the chill that crawled up his spine. "It is Halloween, after all." But as the hours slipped by and the darkness deepened, the figure remained. The fire crackled as the two friends exchanged nervous glances, their initial amusement giving way to a creeping dread. They tried to ignore it, diving into more ghost stories and sharing memories of past Halloweens, but the figure persisted, standing silently just beyond the reach of the cabin's warm glow. "Maybe we should call the police," Casey suggested, her voice trembling slightly. "Just to be safe." Alex hesitated, but he could see the fear etched on her face. Reluctantly, he agreed, dialing the number and reporting their strange encounter. The operator assured them that an officer would be dispatched shortly, but when the call ended, the figure still lingered, its presence unnervingly steadfast. The officer arrived after what felt like an eternity, his flashlight cutting through the darkness like a knife. "You two okay?" he asked, assessing the situation with a practiced eye. "We saw someone out there," Casey explained, gesturing toward the woods, "but now they're gone." "Did you get a good look?" the officer asked, frowning. "This area has a dark history. Strange things happen out here, especially on nights like these. Just be cautious, all right?" With a reassuring nod, the officer left, but a heavy unease settled over the cabin once more. The figure had vanished, but the sense of being watched only intensified, like an invisible weight pressing down on their chests. They tried to return to their festivities, but laughter felt hollow, and every creak of the cabin seemed amplified in the stillness. The conflict raged within them as the knocking grew louder, more frantic, as if desperate for entry. The shadows outside moved closer, creeping up to the windows, their forms indistinguishable from the darkness surrounding them. In that moment, they were faced with a choice. The door stood between them and whatever lay outside, between the safety of their present and the ghosts of their past. As the singing filled the cabin, Alex felt an undeniable pull, a longing to reconnect with the friend they had lost. Maybe we should just open the door," he suggested, his voice wavering. Casey's heart raced as she gripped his arm, torn between fear and the aching desire for closure. "Are you sure?" The question hung heavy in the air, a fragile thread of hesitation. "We could end this," he whispered, his resolve hardening. "We could finally say goodbye." In a moment of collective understanding, they stepped toward the door, a silent agreement binding them as they grasped the cold doorknob together. As they turned it, the air thickened and the temperature dropped. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a void that seemed to pulse with the echoes of their past. And in that darkness, a figure emerged, silhouetted against the moonlight. It was Sarah, her expression a haunting blend of familiarity and sorrow, her voice a soft whisper that cut through the chill. "Let me in," she sang, the words wrapping around their hearts, pulling them toward an unknown fate. As they stood on the threshold, the weight of guilt and unresolved grief surged through them, binding them in that moment. The darkness stretched out before them, an abyss of memories and lost time. With a final glance at each other, they stepped forward, the door swinging wide as the night enveloped them, swallowing their fate whole. What lay beyond remained a mystery, a blend of hope and despair that would linger forever in the depths of the woods, waiting to claim the next weary souls drawn to the light of the cabin on Halloween night. Hours passed, and as the clock struck midnight, they heard a soft rustling outside. Both friends turned to the window, hearts racing. There it was again, a shadow, closer this time, just at the edge of the tree line. It seemed to shift and swirl, barely illuminated by the moonlight. This time, it looked almost human. "Alex, it looks like..." Casey's voice trailed off, her expression frozen in horror. "Like who?" he pressed, dread pooling in his stomach. Like Sarah," she breathed, the name hanging heavy in the air. Sarah, their friend who had tragically died in an accident years ago, a loss that had haunted them both since that fateful day. They had buried her on a cold autumn afternoon, surrounded by golden leaves that seemed to mirror the light of the setting sun. But the memory of her smile remained vivid in their minds. Suddenly, the figure took a step closer, and Alex felt the chill of fear grip him. "This isn't funny anymore," he said, trying to mask his rising panic. "Let's just close the curtains and ignore it." As they shut the blinds, a message pinged on Alex's phone. It was a text from an unknown number. "Let me in." "What the hell?" Casey exclaimed, backing away from the window. "Who is that?" "I don't know," Alex said, his heart racing as he stared at the screen, the words blurring in his vision. "It's probably just some prank." But deep down, they both knew it felt too real, too sinister. The haunting specter of Sarah weighed heavily in the atmosphere, the unresolved grief and guilt manifesting as an insatiable terror outside their cabin. The shadows danced on the walls, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shapes that seemed to pulse with life. As the wind howled outside, it carried with it a sorrowful melody, reminiscent of Sarah's voice. "Should we go outside?" Casey whispered, her eyes wide with fear, yet filled with a strange compulsion to understand what they were facing. "No," Alex shouted, panic tightening his throat. "We can't. We don't know what that is." Yet as they stood together, fear coiling around them, a soft knock echoed against the cabin door. It was gentle yet insistent, a beckoning call that resonated deep within their souls. "Alex," Casey said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if it is her?" "No," he shouted again, shaking his head vehemently. "She's gone, Casey. This is not her." But with each passing second, the knocking continued, accompanied by a soft, mournful singing that wrapped around them like a shroud. Memories flooded back, laughter shared, moments of joy, and the devastating silence that followed Sarah's absence. Another text pinged on Alex's phone. "Please, let me in." Alex's hands trembled as he stared at the screen, feeling the weight of his unresolved feelings pressing down on him. What if this is a chance to say goodbye?" he suggested hesitantly. Casey looked at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "But what if it's not? What if it's something else?" As the haunting tales of the previous stories unfurl, they weave a rich tapestry that explores the shadows lurking in the corners of our lives. Each narrative, steeped in mystery and eeriness, reveals not only the supernatural forces at play, but also the deeply human emotions that bind us: fear, grief, guilt, and the insatiable desire for connection. These stories remind us that Halloween, a time traditionally reserved for spooks and specters, serves as a mirror reflecting our inner struggles and unresolved histories. From Sarah's eerie calls that unearth family secrets, to Emily's cursed doll whispering the tragic tales of the past, and Danny's friends ensnared in a room that feeds on their fears, each story illuminates how the burdens of history can haunt the present. The chilling specter of a lost friend in the woods pulls Alex and Casey back to a moment they desperately wish to understand, highlighting how guilt and unresolved grief manifest in ways we often cannot anticipate. Each narrative confronts the inescapable nature of our own histories, emphasizing that the past does not simply vanish, it lingers, sometimes unnoticed, until it demands to be acknowledged. In a broader sense, Halloween symbolizes a bridge between our world and the unknown. It offers a space to confront fears, to acknowledge the darker aspects of life, and to find camaraderie in shared tales of terror. As we don costumes and embrace the eerie ambiance, we engage in a timeless tradition that allows us to explore the mysteries that lie within us and around us. It's a reminder that we are not alone in our fears, that others too grapple with the shadows of their own pasts. This Halloween, as you carve your pumpkins and share ghost stories around flickering candlelight, take a moment to reflect on the ghosts that inhabit your life, the memories that linger, the relationships that have shaped you, and the choices that define your path. Embrace the celebration of life and death, the known and the unknown, and allow the tales of the season to guide you toward understanding the intricate dance between past and present. Ultimately, these stories remind us that while the figures in the shadows may be frightening, they also serve a purpose: to illuminate the truths we might prefer to keep hidden. In facing these fears, we can better understand ourselves, our families, and our connections to those we have lost. Halloween, with all its spookiness and allure, becomes a poignant reminder that the past and present are intertwined, and that within the darkness, there is the possibility of healing, understanding, and ultimately redemption. So this Halloween, as you revel in the magic of the night, remember that the stories we tell, whether they chill our bones or warm our hearts, carry with them the power to transform, to connect, and to illuminate the hidden corners of our existence. Embrace the unknown, confront your fears, and let the ghosts of your past guide you to a brighter future.